Statement. Member for Khalid Manirayak. Mr. Lightstone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon to my constituents in Khalid, colleagues in the House, as well as Nunavut watching our proceedings. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to address the importance of modernizing the workplace in Nunavut. Mr. Speaker, I strongly believe that the government of Nunavut needs to stop fearing change and embrace greater workplace flexibility. Mr. Speaker, my statement today will focus on two issues related to modernizing the workplace: the move towards a 4-day work week and the adoption of flexible workplace models that incorporate remote and hybrid work practices. Mr. Speaker, as you will recall, a number of my colleagues have recently joined me in urging the government to end the outdated practice of changing the clock twice a year. As we have pointed out on many occasions, this is an antiquated practice that was introduced generations ago to address the needs of a different place and time. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to policies and practices in our current workplace, we're at risk of falling into the same trap of clinging to outdated and unsuitable models of work that are no longer appropriate to our circumstances and which do nothing to address our significant challenges in the area of workplace recruitment and retention. Mr. Speaker, there's an increasing body of evidence to support the move towards a 4-day work week. A number of economists, labor market specialists, and social scientists support the concept that reducing the number of hours that people spend in the workplace will actually increase their productivity. I recognize that this may sound contradictory, but there's ample evidence to support the argument. The 40-hour, 5-day work week that most of us take for granted is actually less than 100 years old. However, the model is outdated and based on a male-dominated workforce paradigm that had a partner to take care of the home and other obligations. Mr. Speaker, my statement is a bit longer than my usual, and I do have a couple of key areas which I would like to highlight. I'd like to seek unanimous consent to conclude my statement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members seeking unanimous consent to conclude his statement. Are there any nays? There are none. Please continue. Mr. Lightstone.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, support continues to grow in North America for the concept of a 4-day work week, and not only among the exhausted, overwhelmed employees who could use another day off to rest. Once considered little more than a thought experiment, business leaders are now viewing reduced work hours as an inevitability in the coming years, and the trend will only intensify as employment rates remain historically low and companies compete for skilled workers. Mr. Speaker, for decades, dual-income households and single parents have struggled to maintain a work-life balance, which has been contributing to increased burnout, stress, depression and anxiety, with declining mental and physical health, all of which are serious issues here in Nunavut. Mr. Speaker, when parents are participating in the workplace with full-time employment, life is a constant rush. At the end of the day, parents are lucky if they get to spend a few hours of quality time with their children. Mr. Speaker, it is the children who suffer the most when society's work expectations do not allow for an appropriate work-life balance. Mr. Speaker, people who study work for a living are beginning to ask why we work so much when it is proven that productivity declines after working a certain period. Mr. Speaker, in the aftermath of the pandemic, an increasing number of jurisdictions around the world have adopted a 4-day work week, either as pilot projects or on a permanent basis. Reports from these jurisdictions have shown successful results indicating that implementation of a 4-day work week is beneficial in a number of ways, including greater gender equity and job productivity, lower energy consumption, increased workplace morale, and improved mental and physical health for workers. In addition, employers are experiencing benefits of lower turnover and greater applicant pools. Where it has been implemented, the 4-day work week has been shown to benefit employers, employees, clients, and most importantly, society as a whole. Some may argue that there are certain employment categories within the government of Nunavut that would not be compatible with a 4-day work week, such as frontline staff, including healthcare professionals. Mr. Speaker, I argue that those frontline workers are the professions that are currently suffering from some of the highest rates of stress, fatigue, burnout, and turnover. These are the types of positions which our society is so dependent on and which would benefit the most from introducing such a change. Mr. Speaker, the government of Nunavut continues to struggle with efforts to increase Nunavut employment, reduce high vacancy rates, adapt to an aging workforce, and compete effectively with employers across the country for skilled labor. Mr. Speaker, the government's most recent quarterly employment report indicates that over 2,000 positions are vacant, which represents a vacancy rate of almost 40%. This marks a new high, or low, depending on how you look at it, in Nunavut, and is a level which is unparalleled in other Canadian jurisdictions. Our high vacancy rate has significant negative impacts on employees and the quality of service provided to Nunavut. High vacancies require employees to often do the work of more than one person, exacerbating the work-life struggle and burnout. While struggling to address high vacancy rates, Nunavut is attempting to recruit employees in an increasingly competitive labor market where the demand is so high that extraordinary measures beyond simple financial compensation must be taken to attract and retain talent. Our government must be more employee-oriented in order to enhance services to Nunavut. I believe that moving towards a 4-day work week and adopting remote and hybrid models of work will show that we are serious about being an employer of choice and will attract more professionals to Nunavut and increase the retention rate amongst our public servants. Mr. Speaker, furthermore, a 4-day work week would improve the quality of life for Nunavut residents. The extra day off would give employees more time to spend with their families and participate in community activities, and most importantly, strengthen the cultural connections and create greater sense of community. Mr. Speaker, the number of entities in the private and nonprofit sectors in Nunavut that are moving towards a 4-day work week is increasing. For example, it is my understanding that the Ilituximnik Society has engaged in an independent external evaluator to review the results of its current 4-day work week pilot project, and strongly encourage the society to share these results with the government of Nunavut. Mr. Speaker, one of the outcomes of the recent national public service strike is that the federal government explicitly acknowledges and recognizes that hybrid and remote work is here to stay and that it should be welcomed. The Treasury Board of Canada's common hybrid work model for the federal public service indicates in part, and I quote, "Prior to the pandemic, most public servants worked almost exclusively from federal offices and work sites. Alternative work arrangements were rare and normally reserved for temporary, exceptional circumstances. COVID-19 showed us that we could work differently and are neither returning to a traditional model nor continuing with one imposed on us by the pandemic. With the opportunity to reimagine our work, the Government of Canada has chosen a hybrid work model." End quote. Nearly finished, Speaker. Nunavut cannot risk being left behind in the past when our competitors are looking to the future. I strongly encourage the government to move decisively in the direction that I've described. Now, I'll have a number of questions on these topics during the current spring sitting. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.